When a CEO spots a homeless man near his office, he takes a chance and hires him for just one day. What begins as an act of curiosity soon transforms into a life-changing experience. The man's relentless hard work, humility, and perseverance leave the CEO, and everyone around him in tears. This heartwarming story is a powerful reminder that a single opportunity can reveal incredible potential and change lives forever. Richard Blake was the epitome of success. As the CEO of Blake Enterprises, his name was synonymous with innovation, leadership, and an empire worth billions. Yet, despite his professional triumphs, he often found himself haunted by a hollow feeling. Lavish boardrooms, designer suits, and a corner office overlooking the city skyline failed to fill the growing void within. One rainy morning, as his sleek black car idled at a stoplight on the way to the office, Richard glanced out of the window. On the corner, under the awning of a closed diner, sat a man holding a cardboard sign. His clothes were tattered, and his eyes spoke of sleepless nights and years of hardship. The sign read in shaky handwriting, "Will work for food." Something about the man made Richard linger. His drivers usually sped past such scenes, as if poverty were invisible. But today, Richard felt compelled to act. Without overthinking, he rolled down the tinted window and waved the man over. "Excuse me," Richard called out. The man looked up, rain dripping from his unkempt hair, and hesitated before approaching. "Yes, sir," the man said, his voice hoarse but polite. "What's your name?" Richard asked, noting the man's cautious demeanor. Tom Peterson." "Well, Tom, how about this? You come work for me for a day. I'll pay you well and we'll see how it goes. Deal?" Tom blinked as if he wasn't sure he had heard correctly. "You mean it? You're offering me a job?" Richard nodded. "Yes. Meet me at this address at 9 a.m. sharp," he said, handing Tom a business card. "You'll need to clean up a bit first, but if you show up ready to work, the rest we'll figure out." Tom stared at the card as though it were a golden ticket. "Thank you, sir. I won't let you down." Richard nodded, but as the light turned green and the car drove away, he wondered what had compelled him to make such an impulsive decision. He pushed the thought aside, knowing the day ahead would soon consume him. The next morning, Richard arrived at his office early, an unusual move for someone who typically walked in only minutes before the first meeting of the day. He was reviewing a few contracts when his assistant buzzed in. "Mr. Blake, there's a visitor here to see you," she said hesitantly. "He says his name is Tom Peterson." Richard smiled. "Send him in." Tom entered wearing a second-hand suit that didn't quite fit. His hair was neatly combed, and he clutched Richard's business card like a lifeline. Despite his nervous demeanor, there was a quiet determination in his eyes. "You're early," Richard noted, motioning for Tom to sit. "Figured I shouldn't waste this chance," Tom said, sitting down carefully, as if afraid he might ruin the expensive leather chair. Richard handed Tom a list of tasks, simple things like sorting documents, organizing supply closets, and assisting the facilities team. Tom took the paper and nodded earnestly. "I'll get started right away." As the morning unfolded, Richard observed Tom's interactions with the staff. Despite his circumstances, Tom worked with an energy and precision that surprised everyone. While some employees whispered and exchanged skeptical glances, others were impressed by his attitude. By midday, Richard realized something. Tom wasn't just doing the work, he was exceeding expectations. As the day unfolded, Tom's presence in the bustling Blake Enterprises office became a source of intrigue. Employees whispered behind half-closed doors and exchanged curious glances in the hallways. The corporate world, accustomed to polished appearances and pedigreed resumes, wasn't prepared for a man like Tom Peterson, someone who had walked in from the street with nothing but a borrowed suit and a willingness to work. Tom's first task was to organize a supply closet that had become a dumping ground for years of unused office supplies. What seemed like a menial task to most was something Tom approached with determination. Within an hour, he had transformed the chaotic mess into a neatly labeled and accessible space. Employees who stopped by to grab a notepad or a stapler left surprised by the meticulous order. "Who did this?" one of the managers asked Richard during a passing conversation. "Tom," Richard replied simply, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Tom, you mean the manager caught himself and cleared his throat. "That's impressive." By mid-morning, Tom was assigned to assist the facilities team with a few maintenance issues. Despite the initial skepticism of the team members, He quickly proved himself. A leaky faucet in the break room was fixed in minutes. A jammed office chair was dismantled, repaired, and returned as good as new. Employees began to realize that Tom wasn't just willing to work. He was resourceful and knowledgeable. During a coffee break, one of the facility's team members asked, "How'd you learn to fix stuff like that?" Tom shrugged modestly. "Life teaches you things when you've got no other choice. I used to do odd jobs, you know? Fixing things, building things, whatever paid the bills." As he spoke, a group of employees nearby overheard him. One of them, a junior associate named Lisa, felt a pang of guilt for her earlier judgment. She had assumed Tom wouldn't last an hour in the corporate environment. Now, watching him, she realized how wrong she had been. After finishing the morning tasks, Richard invited Tom to join him for lunch in the executive dining room. It was a rare gesture. Richard rarely ate with anyone outside his inner circle of board members or clients. Tom hesitated. "Are you sure? I don't want to make anyone uncomfortable." Richard chuckled. "Tom, you've been making everyone uncomfortable all morning, but in the best way. You're proving that hard work doesn't come with a dress code. Let's eat." The dining room was an intimidating space. It was adorned with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city, and tables set with pristine white linens. Tom's discomfort was evident as he followed Richard to a table near the window. As they sat down, Richard broke the ice. "So, Tom, tell me your story. How did you end up on that street corner yesterday?" Tom paused, his hands fidgeting with the edge of the tablecloth. "It's a long story." "We've got time," Richard said, leaning back in his chair. Tom took a deep breath. "Well, I wasn't always homeless. I had a family once, a wife, a daughter. I worked as a carpenter, built cabinets, furniture, stuff like that. We had a small house, not much, but it was ours." "What happened?" Richard asked gently. "Life happened," Tom replied, his voice tinged with sadness. "My daughter got sick. We didn't have good insurance and the medical bills piled up fast. I worked every hour I could, but it wasn't enough. We lost the house and eventually I lost them. My wife left, took my daughter with her, said she couldn't do it anymore." Richard nodded, his expression somber. "And after that?" "After that, I drifted," Tom continued. "Tried to find work wherever I could. But without a permanent address or clean clothes, people stopped taking me seriously. One bad day turned into a bad week, and before I knew it, I was living on the streets." There was a long silence between them. Richard, usually so adept at filling lulls in conversation, found himself at a loss for words. Tom's story wasn't unique. He knew that, but hearing it firsthand, sitting across from the man himself, made it impossible to ignore. "You're a survivor," Richard said finally. "Most people would have given up a long time ago." Tom shrugged. "When you've got nothing, you learn to keep going. Stopping isn't an option." After lunch, Richard gave Tom a tour of the office. Employees watched in astonishment as their CEO personally escorted the man they had been whispering about all morning. Richard didn't care about the stares or the murmurs. He was beginning to realize that Tom had more to teach him than any corporate consultant ever could. At one point, they stopped by the IT department, where a frustrated employee was dealing with a malfunctioning server. Tom, curious, asked what the problem was. The employee explained, half dismissively, assuming Tom wouldn't understand. To everyone's surprise, Tom offered a solution. "Have you checked the power supply? Sometimes a faulty connection can cause issues like that." The IT technician, skeptical but out of options, tried Tom's suggestion. Within minutes, the server was back online. "How did you know that?" Richard asked, genuinely impressed. "Worked in a factory once," Tom explained. "Spent a lot of time fixing machines that broke down. Same principles apply, I guess." By the end of the day, word of Tom's abilities had spread throughout the office. Employees who had initially been wary of him now approached him with respect and curiosity. Some even asked for advice on small tasks like fixing a broken chair or organizing their desks more efficiently. As the sun set and the office began to empty, Richard called Tom into his office one last time. Tom entered, looking tired but proud of a day well spent. "Tom, you've done more today than most people do in a week," Richard said, gesturing for him to sit. "You've reminded me, and everyone here, what hard work and determination look like." Tom smiled modestly. "I'm just grateful for the chance." Richard leaned forward, his tone serious. "You know, when I saw you on that street corner, I thought I was the one helping you. but now I realize you've helped me more than you know." "How so?" Tom asked, surprised. "You've reminded me that success doesn't make anyone better than anyone else," Richard said. "It's easy to get caught up in titles and appearances, but at the end of the day what matters is character, and you've got that in spades." Tom looked down, his eyes glistening. "Thank you, Mr. Blake, that means a lot." Richard reached into his desk drawer and pulled out an envelope. "This is for you," he said, handing it to Tom. Tom opened it cautiously and gasped. Inside was a check for $10,000. "I can't take this," Tom said, shaking his head. "It's too much." "You've earned it," Richard insisted. "Use it to get back on your feet. Find a place to stay, get some tools, start working again. You deserve a second chance." Tom hesitated, then finally accepted the envelope. "Thank you, Mr. Blake. I don't know how I'll ever repay you. Just promise me one thing," Richard said, standing up and extending his hand. "When you're back on your feet, pay it forward. Help someone else the way I've helped you." Tom shook Richard's hand firmly. "I promise." As Tom left the office, Richard watched him go, a mix of pride and humility washing over him. For the first time in years, he felt truly inspired, not by a business deal or a stock market win, but by the resilience of a man who had reminded him what it meant to be human. The following morning, Tom woke up in a small motel room that Richard had arranged for him. For the first time in years, he wasn't waking up on a park bench or a shelter cot. The modest room with clean sheets and a private bathroom felt like a palace to him. As he stood under the hot water of the shower, letting it wash away the grime and exhaustion of his old life, Tom allowed himself to think of the possibilities that lay ahead. With Richard's check in hand, Tom started to make plans. He didn't want to squander the opportunity that had been given to him. He visited a local thrift store to purchase a few essentials: a pair of sturdy work boots, some clean clothes, and a second-hand toolbox. The remaining money he kept carefully tucked away for a deposit on an apartment and other future needs. For Tom, every dollar represented hope. Later that day, Tom visited a nearby job site where he had seen a help wanted sign. It was a construction company looking for temporary labor. Tom approached the site manager, a burly man named Mike, who looked skeptical as Tom introduced himself. "I'm a carpenter by trade," Tom said confidently. "I can build, repair, and restore just about anything." Mike crossed his arms. "You got references?" Tom hesitated but stood his ground. "Not on paper, but if you give me one chance, I'll prove I can do the work." Something about Tom's honesty struck a chord with Mike. "All right," he said after a long pause. "Show up tomorrow morning at 6. Don't be late." Tom nodded, his heart racing with relief. "Thank you, I won't let you down." The next morning, Tom arrived at the site well before dawn. Despite being given a trial position, he treated the job as if it were a permanent placement. He worked tirelessly, framing walls, sanding wood, and installing fixtures with a precision that impressed his co-workers. By the end of the week, Mike approached him with an offer to stay on full-time. "You've earned it," Mike said, clapping him on the back. "We need people like you." Tom accepted the offer, his heart full of gratitude. For the first time in years, he had steady income and a sense of purpose. Meanwhile, at Blake Enterprises, Richard couldn't stop thinking about Tom. The experience of spending a day with him had left a profound impact on the CEO. Richard began looking for ways to extend the ethos of second chances into his business practices. He organized a meeting with his leadership team to discuss implementing a new initiative, a program to provide employment and training opportunities for people struggling with homelessness or other hardships. Not everyone in the room was immediately on board. "Richard, this could be a PR nightmare if it goes wrong," one of the executives warned. "What if these people aren't qualified or don't take the opportunity seriously?" Richard remained firm. "If we don't take risks to make a difference, what are we even doing here? Our company has the resources to change lives. I'd rather fail trying than succeed doing nothing." The program launched quietly at first, with a few trial participants. But as word spread about Blake Enterprises giving people second chances, the company began to receive praise from the community and the media. Formerly homeless individuals, veterans, and others struggling to re-enter the workforce were offered opportunities to learn new skills and prove themselves in a supportive environment. Months passed, and Tom continued to rebuild his life. He moved into a modest one-bedroom apartment and began saving money. On weekends, he volunteered at a local shelter, helping others in situations he had once been in. He fixed broken furniture, repaired leaking pipes, and offered encouragement to those who had all but given up hope. One day, while volunteering, Tom was surprised to see Richard walk through the shelter doors. Dressed casually, the CEO seemed out of place, yet perfectly at ease. He greeted Tom with a warm handshake. "I heard you were doing some good work here," Richard said, glancing around at the bustling shelter. Tom smiled. "Just paying it forward like I promised." Richard gestured toward the shelter director, who was leading a tour for a group of donors. "Blake Enterprises has decided to support this place. We're funding a renovation project to make it more functional. Thought you might want to be a part of it." Tom's eyes widened in disbelief. "Are you serious? You want me to help with that?" Richard nodded. "You're one of the best workers I've seen, Tom. And besides, who better to lead this project than someone who truly understands what this place means?" Tom felt a lump in his throat as he looked around the shelter. For years, it had been a lifeline for him, a place that had kept him going when he had nowhere else to turn. The thought of being able to give back in such a meaningful way was overwhelming. "I'd be honored," Tom said, his voice thick with emotion. Over the next few months, Tom led the renovation project with passion and dedication. He worked alongside a team of volunteers, many of whom were shelter residents looking to learn new skills. Under Tom's guidance, they transformed the aging facility into a vibrant, welcoming space. The shelter's dining hall was expanded, private sleeping quarters were added, and a small workshop was created to teach practical skills like carpentry and plumbing. The grand reopening of the shelter was a community event. Residents, volunteers, and local officials gathered to celebrate the transformation. Richard gave a brief speech, acknowledging the hard work and generosity of everyone involved. Then, to everyone's surprise, he invited Tom to the podium. "Tom Peterson," Richard began, "is proof that with a little kindness and opportunity, anyone can turn their life around. He didn't just take the chance he was given, he used it to lift others up. This shelter is a testament to his resilience and heart." Tom, visibly moved, stepped forward to address the crowd. "A year ago, I was standing on a street corner with nothing. I never thought I'd be here today, surrounded by so much love and support. All I did was take the chance someone gave me, and I hope this place inspires others to do the same. Thank you for believing in me." The crowd erupted in applause, and Tom's eyes met Richard's. In that moment, both men understood the profound impact they had had on each other's lives. The transformation of the shelter marked a turning point for both Tom and Richard. The project had been more than a renovation. It had become a symbol of hope and possibility for the entire community. Word of Tom's leadership and Richard's initiative spread, drawing attention from local businesses, nonprofits, and even national media outlets. Both men were now seen as champions of change, though they would be the first to deflect such praise. One morning, as Tom walked to the construction site where he now worked as a foreman, his phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. Normally, he would have ignored it, but something told him to answer. "Hello, this is Tom Peterson," he said. "Mr. Peterson," a woman's voice replied. "This is Linda Watson. I'm the director of a nonprofit organization that helps formerly homeless individuals rebuild their lives. I've been following your story, and I was wondering if you'd be willing to meet with me. I think there's more we could do together." Tom was taken aback. "I'd love to hear more," he replied. "When would you like to meet?" The two arranged to meet later that week. During their conversation, Linda explained her vision, a community center that would provide job training, counseling, and temporary housing. She wanted Tom's input on the design and operations given his firsthand experience. "We need someone who understands what our clients are going through," Linda said. "Not just someone with a hammer, but someone with a heart." Tom felt an overwhelming sense of purpose as he listened. This was an opportunity to create something meaningful, something that could change countless lives. He agreed to join the project as a consultant, offering his expertise in construction and his insights as someone who had lived through homelessness. While Tom was diving into the new project, Richard was expanding his efforts at Blake Enterprises. The Second Chance Employment Program had been a resounding success, with dozens of individuals finding stable jobs and regaining their confidence. Inspired by the results, Richard decided to take things a step further. He announced the creation of a foundation, funded by a portion of Blake Enterprises' profits, to support initiatives aimed at addressing homelessness, addiction, and mental health. The foundation would partner with nonprofits, shelters, and community organizations to provide resources and opportunities for those in need. At the foundation's launch event, Richard delivered a heartfelt speech. "This isn't just about writing checks," he said. "It's about creating a society where everyone has the chance to thrive. People like Tom Peterson have shown us that sometimes all it takes is one opportunity to change a life." The audience erupted in applause, but Richard's thoughts were on Tom. He made a mental note to involve him in the foundation's efforts. Tom's perspective and experience were invaluable, and Richard knew that together, they could accomplish even more. As Tom's life continued to stabilize, he began to think about the relationships he had lost during his years on the streets. Chief among them was his daughter, Emily, whom he hadn't seen in nearly a decade. The memory of her as a young girl, full of laughter and curiosity, haunted him. He wondered if she would even recognize him now, or if she would want to. One evening, after much hesitation, Tom reached out to her via social media. His message was simple. "Emily, it's Dad. I've missed you every day. I'm trying to rebuild my life and be someone you can be proud of. If you're open to it, I'd love the chance to talk." Days passed with no response, and Tom tried to prepare himself for the possibility that Emily might not reply. But one afternoon, his phone buzzed with a notification. "Hi, Dad," the message began. "I've been wondering about you for years. I'd like to meet and hear your story." Tom's heart swelled with emotion. They arranged to meet at a park near Emily's college campus. When the day came, Tom arrived early, his hands trembling with nervous anticipation. When Emily finally appeared, he felt an overwhelming mix of joy and regret. "Hi, Dad," she said softly, her voice carrying a blend of warmth and uncertainty. "Hi, sweetheart," Tom replied, his voice breaking. "Thank you for giving me this chance." As they sat on a bench, Tom shared his journey, the mistakes he had made, the pain he had endured, and the lessons he had learned. Emily listened intently, tears streaming down her face. "I always wondered why you disappeared," she said. "But now I understand, and I'm proud of you, Dad, for fighting your way back." The reunion marked a new chapter for Tom, one where he could begin to mend the bonds that had been broken by his past. Emily became a constant presence in his life, offering support and encouragement as he continued to build his future. As the years passed, the community center Tom had helped design became a reality. It was named the Peterson Center for Renewal, a tribute to his resilience and dedication. The center provided job training, counseling, and transitional housing, serving as a beacon of hope for those in need. Tom continued to work closely with Richard and the Blake Enterprises Foundation, sharing his insights and advocating for those who had been overlooked by society. Together, they launched initiatives that addressed systemic barriers to housing and employment, changing lives on a larger scale than either of them had imagined. At the grand opening of the Peterson Center, Tom stood before a crowd of supporters, friends, and former shelter residents. Richard stood beside him, smiling with pride. "This center is proof that no one is beyond redemption," Tom said. "Every person here has the potential to change the world, not just their own, but the worlds of those around them. All it takes is someone believing in them." The crowd erupted in applause as Tom and Richard embraced, their partnership a testament to the transformative power of kindness and second chances. The opening of the Peterson Center for Renewal marked a pivotal moment, but it was only the beginning. With its doors open, Tom and Richard faced the real challenges of running a center dedicated to transforming lives. The reality of addressing homelessness, addiction, and systemic barriers to success proved far more complex than either of them had anticipated. Despite the excitement surrounding the center, the first few months were tough. Many of the residents came from deeply traumatic backgrounds and struggled to adjust to the structured environment. Some resisted the rules, others relapsed into addiction, and a few left the program altogether. Tom, having lived through similar struggles, felt these setbacks deeply. One evening, after a particularly rough day, he sat in his small office at the center, his head in his hands. Richard walked in and immediately noticed Tom's disheartened expression. "Rough day?" Richard asked, pulling up a chair. "You could say that," Tom replied. "I knew this wouldn't be easy, but it's harder than I imagined. Some of these people, they remind me of myself at my lowest, and it hurts to see them give up." Richard placed a reassuring hand on Tom's shoulder. "You can't save everyone, Tom, but the fact that you're here trying makes a difference. We just need to keep learning, adapting, and showing them that we're not giving up on them." Tom nodded, finding solace in Richard's words. They decided to hold weekly meetings with the staff and residents to address concerns and create a stronger sense of community. Over time, this open dialogue helped foster trust and accountability, laying a foundation for growth. As the center stabilized, Tom and Richard began to dream bigger. They envisioned satellite locations in other parts of the city, each tailored to the unique needs of its community. To achieve this, they needed funding, partnerships, and public support. Richard leveraged his connections in the business world, hosting fundraisers and networking events to drum up support. At one such event, Tom was asked to share his story. Standing before an audience of CEOs, philanthropists, and government officials, he spoke with raw honesty. "I was one of the people you probably walked past on the street," Tom said. "I wasn't invisible, but I might as well have been. People saw me as a lost cause, a statistic, but Richard Blake saw something different. He gave me a chance, and that chance changed everything. Now I want to do the same for others." His words resonated deeply, and donations poured in. With this newfound support, the Peterson Center expanded its reach, opening 2 additional locations within the next year. Each center focused on holistic care, combining job training, mental health support, and transitional housing. Meanwhile, Tom's personal life continued to evolve. His relationship with Emily grew stronger as they spent more time together. She often visited the center, volunteering to tutor residents pursuing GEDs or higher education. One afternoon, as Tom watched Emily help a resident study algebra, he felt a surge of pride. He approached her after the session, his voice filled with emotion. "You're amazing, Emily," he said. "Seeing you here, helping others, it means the world to me." Emily smiled. "I got it from you, Dad. You've shown me what it means to care for others." Their bond deepened with every shared moment, and Tom felt a sense of fulfillment he hadn't known was possible. While Tom focused on the day-to-day operations of the center, Richard underwent his own transformation. Working closely with Tom and the residents opened his eyes to the complexities of homelessness and systemic inequality. He began to question his own role in perpetuating those systems. One evening during a quiet moment at the foundation office, Richard confided in Tom. "I've spent most of my life chasing success," Richard said, "but now I see how many people get left behind in that pursuit. It's not enough to build a company or amass wealth. I want to use what I've built to make things better for everyone." Tom smiled. "You already are, Richard. The work we're doing here, it's changing lives." Richard nodded, but his mind was already racing with ideas. He decided to pivot some of Blake Enterprises' initiatives, prioritizing corporate social responsibility and sustainable practices. He also launched a mentorship program, pairing business leaders with individuals from underserved communities. As the Peterson Center's success grew, so did its influence. Former residents began to share their stories, inspiring others to seek help and take steps toward rebuilding their lives. One of these residents, a young woman named Clara, became a powerful advocate for the center. Clara had entered the program after escaping an abusive relationship that left her homeless. With the center's support, she secured a job, pursued a degree in social work, and eventually became a counselor at the center. At a community event, Clara spoke about her journey. "I thought my life was over," she said, "but this place gave me hope. It showed me that no matter how far you've fallen, there's always a way back. And now, I get to help others find their way too." Her words were met with a standing ovation, and Tom and Richard couldn't have been prouder. Clara's success was a testament to the power of second chances and the impact of their work. While the Peterson Center for Renewal had made incredible strides, the road was not without challenges. Success often attracts scrutiny, and as the center's influence grew, so did the skepticism and resistance from certain quarters. Tom and Richard found themselves grappling with external pressures that tested their resilience and commitment. As the center expanded, a series of articles emerged questioning its practices. Some critics claimed the initiative was a vanity project for Richard Blake, a ploy to polish his public image. Others raised concerns about whether the funds were being used effectively. One article even suggested that Tom Peterson's involvement was little more than a PR strategy, given his background. Tom read the articles with a sinking feeling. While he had come to terms with his past, Seeing it framed as a liability stung deeply. Richard, however, was less fazed. "Let them talk," Richard said one morning in his office. "We know the truth. We've seen the lives we've changed." "But what if people believe them?" Tom asked. "What if this discourages others from supporting us?" Richard leaned forward, his expression resolute. "Then we'll prove them wrong. We'll be transparent, show our results, and keep doing the work. The people who matter, the ones we're helping, they know what we're about." To counter the criticism, the center launched a public awareness campaign. They shared success stories, hosted open houses, and invited journalists to tour the facilities. Tom and Richard also participated in interviews, addressing concerns head-on. "We're not perfect," Richard admitted during a televised segment, "but we're learning, and we're committed. This isn't about me or Tom. It's about the people we serve and the difference we can make together." The transparency paid off. Donations resumed, public support grew stronger, and the detractors found themselves overshadowed by the center's undeniable impact. Within the center, tensions occasionally flared among the residents and staff. The work was emotionally taxing, and not everyone agreed on how to handle certain situations. One particularly heated conflict arose when a resident, Marcus, was caught sneaking alcohol into the facility. The staff debated whether to expel Marcus, as the rules explicitly prohibited substance use on the premises. Tom, however, advocated for a different approach. "Marcus is struggling," Tom argued during a staff meeting. "Kicking him out won't solve anything. It'll just push him back into the cycle we're trying to break." One of the staff members, a seasoned social worker named Karen, disagreed. "Tom, I understand where you're coming from, but we have to maintain order. If we're too lenient, it sends the wrong message to everyone else." Richard, who had been listening quietly, finally spoke up. "What if we meet in the middle? Marcus gets one chance to stay, but only if he agrees to additional counseling and support. That way, we're upholding the rules while giving him the help he needs." The compromise was implemented, and Marcus, though initially resistant, eventually accepted the terms. With time and support, he turned things around, becoming one of the center's most active participants in group therapy. As the center navigated these challenges, Richard faced a personal crisis. His health, which he had neglected for years in favor of work, began to deteriorate. After experiencing chest pains during a board meeting, he was rushed to the hospital and diagnosed with a mild heart attack. The incident was a wake-up call. As Richard recovered, he reassessed his priorities. He delegated more responsibilities at Blake Enterprises, stepping back from the day-to-day operations to focus on his health and his work with the center. During his recovery, Tom visited him frequently, often bringing stories from the center to lift his spirits. "You've built something incredible, Richard," Tom said during one visit. "But you can't keep pushing yourself like this. We need you around for the long haul." Richard smiled weakly. "I guess it's time to practice what I preach, finding balance and taking care of what matters." Despite the hurdles, the Peterson Center continued to thrive, thanks to the unwavering commitment of its staff, residents, and supporters. The setbacks only seemed to strengthen their resolve, uniting everyone under a shared mission. The community around the center also played a significant role. Local businesses partnered with the center to provide job opportunities for residents, while nearby schools organized donation drives to support its programs. Neighborhood volunteers began mentoring residents, offering everything from financial literacy workshops to cooking classes. One day during a community event at the center, Tom stood on a makeshift stage, addressing a crowd of supporters, residents, and neighbors. "This center isn't just about giving people a place to stay," he said. "It's about giving them a reason to hope, a chance to rebuild, and none of this would be possible without all of you. Thank you for believing in us." The crowd erupted in applause, and Richard, watching from the sidelines, felt an overwhelming sense of pride, not in himself, but in what they had created together. As the center marked its second anniversary, Tom and Richard reflected on how far they had come. What began as an impulsive decision on a rainy day had grown into a movement, a testament to the power of compassion, resilience, and second chances. One evening, as they walked through the garden behind the main center, Richard turned to Tom. "Do you ever think about what your life would be like if we hadn't met that day?" Richard asked. Tom smiled thoughtfully. "All the time, and I always come to the same conclusion. I wouldn't be here. But I also think about how much that moment changed you. It wasn't just about saving me. It was about finding something more meaningful for yourself. Richard nodded. You're right. I thought I was giving you a chance, but you ended up giving me one too. The two men stood in silence for a moment, watching as residents gathered around a fire pit, laughing and sharing stories. It was a scene that captured everything they had worked for, a community transformed by the simple act of believing in one another. The third year of the Peterson Center for Renewal brought new milestones and even greater challenges. As the organization continued to expand its reach, Tom and Richard began to focus on the future, not just for the center, but for their personal journeys as well. Their partnership had grown into a profound friendship, one built on mutual respect, gratitude, and the shared belief in the power of second chances. As the Peterson Center's programs proved successful, the demand for its services grew. Applications poured in from people across the state and even beyond, hoping for an opportunity to transform their lives. However, the center's capacity was limited, and Tom and Richard faced a difficult decision. Should they expand further or focus on deepening their impact within the existing facility? One evening, the two men sat in Richard's home office, surrounded by blueprints and financial reports. Tom leaned back in his chair, looking overwhelmed. Richard, I don't want to lose what makes the center special, Tom said. It's not just a place, it's a community. If we grow too big, we might lose that connection. Richard nodded thoughtfully. I understand, Tom. But what if expansion doesn't mean a bigger building? What if we replicate the model? Smaller centers in other cities, each with its own tight-knit community. Tom's eyes lit up. You mean franchising the idea, but keeping it personal? Exactly, Richard replied. We'd partner with local leaders, train staff in our approach, and ensure each center maintains the same values. It's about spreading the philosophy, not just the brand. Excited by the prospect, the two began drafting a plan. Over the following months, they worked tirelessly to secure funding, build partnerships, and identify communities that could benefit from a Peterson Center of their own. As part of the expansion effort, Tom was invited to share his story at a high-profile charity gala hosted by Blake Enterprises. Though he was initially hesitant, Richard encouraged him to embrace the opportunity. Your story is the heart of what we're doing, Richard said. People need to hear it from you. On the night of the gala, Tom stood nervously backstage, dressed in a suit that felt foreign to him. As he stepped onto the stage, the spotlight blinded him momentarily, but the sound of applause gave him courage. He began, 3 years ago, I was standing in the rain holding a cardboard sign that read, "Will work for food." I had lost everything, my home, my dignity, and my hope. That's when Richard Blake, a man I didn't know, stopped and offered me something I hadn't had in years, a chance. Tom spoke about his journey, the struggles, the triumphs, and the moments of doubt. He shared how the center had not only given him a home but also a purpose. By the time he finished, the room was silent, many audience members visibly moved. I'm standing here today because someone believed in me, Tom concluded. And now, through the Peterson Center, we're passing that belief on to others. Every life is worth saving. Every person deserves a second chance. The audience erupted in applause, and Tom stepped off the stage, his heart racing. Richard was waiting for him, beaming with pride. You nailed it, Richard said, clapping Tom on the back. That was incredible. While their professional lives flourished, both men experienced significant personal growth as well. For Tom, the center had become more than just a place to work. It was his family. He developed close friendships with the residents and staff, finding a sense of belonging he hadn't felt in years. One relationship in particular stood out. Claire, a social worker who had joined the center 2 years earlier, became an integral part of Tom's life. Their shared passion for helping others brought them together, and what began as a friendship slowly blossomed into something more. On a quiet evening, after a long day at the center, Tom and Claire sat on a park bench overlooking the city skyline. I never thought I'd get to this point, Tom admitted. A place where I could imagine a future that feels stable. Claire smiled, taking his hand. You've worked hard for it, Tom. You deserve happiness. And what about you? Tom asked, turning to her. Do you see a future with someone like me? Claire's answer was simple but heartfelt. I already do. For Richard, his journey of redemption extended to his estranged family. The near-death experience from his heart attack had prompted him to reconnect with his daughter, Emily, who had grown distant during his years of workaholism. During a heartfelt conversation, Richard apologized for the years he had missed and expressed his desire to make amends. "I can't change the past, Emily," he said, "but I want to be there for you now, for whatever you need." Emily, moved by his sincerity, agreed to give their relationship another chance. Over time, they rebuilt their bond, with Richard becoming a regular presence in her life and even attending her college graduation, a moment he considered one of his proudest. As the Peterson Center prepared to open its first satellite location, an unexpected challenge threatened to derail their plans. A major donor, who had pledged a significant amount for the expansion, suddenly withdrew their support, citing economic uncertainties. The setback was devastating. Without the funds, the new center couldn't proceed, and the team faced the prospect of laying off staff or scaling back programs. Tom and Richard held an emergency meeting to address the crisis. "We can't give up now," Tom said. "There has to be another way." Richard agreed. "We'll find the money. Even if I have to dip into my own savings, we'll make this happen." Determined not to let the setback define them, they launched a crowdfunding campaign, sharing stories from the center and highlighting the lives it had changed. The response was overwhelming. Donations poured in from individuals, businesses, and even former residents who wanted to give back. By the end of the campaign, they had not only reached their goal, but exceeded it, ensuring the satellite center could open as planned. The grand opening of the second Peterson Center was a celebration of resilience and community. Tom and Richard stood side by side as the ribbon was cut, surrounded by staff, residents, and supporters. The moment was a testament to everything they had achieved together. As the crowd cheered, Tom turned to Richard with a smile. "I never thought I'd say this, but thank you for everything." Richard chuckled, clapping Tom on the shoulder. "You're welcome. But remember, this is just the beginning." Over the years, the Peterson Center grew into a nationwide movement, with locations in cities across the country. Each center carried the same mission: to provide hope, support, and opportunity to those who needed it most. Tom and Richard continued to lead the organization, their friendship a cornerstone of its success. They often reflected on the rainy day that had brought them together, marveling at how a single act of kindness had transformed countless lives, including their own. As they looked toward the future, they knew one thing for certain: when people are given a second chance, the possibilities are endless. With the Peterson Center thriving and its satellite locations gaining momentum, the ripple effect of Tom and Richard's journey began to reach even further. Their story inspired countless others to believe in the transformative power of compassion and second chances, leading to a series of unexpected and heartwarming developments. One of the most remarkable outcomes was how the local community rallied around the Peterson Center. Volunteers from all walks of life, students, retirees, professionals, offered their time and skills to support the residents. Some taught classes, others organized job fairs, and many simply spent time building relationships with those who needed encouragement. The center also became a hub for businesses looking to make a difference. Local companies partnered with the Peterson Center to offer internships and apprenticeships to residents, providing them with valuable work experience and the chance to rebuild their lives. Many of these residents went on to secure full-time employment, becoming proud contributors to the community. One such resident was Maya, a single mother who had lost everything due to a series of unfortunate circumstances. With the center's support, she completed a hospitality management program and landed a job at a local hotel. A year later, she was promoted to a managerial position, and her transformation inspired others to believe in their potential. At an event celebrating the center's 5th anniversary, Maya took the stage to share her story. "This place didn't just give me a roof over my head, it gave me hope," she said, her voice steady but emotional. "And it taught me that I'm not defined by my past. Thank you for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself." Her speech earned a standing ovation, and as Tom and Richard looked on, they felt immense pride in what the center had become. Tom's story of transformation continued to resonate with people far beyond the center's walls. He was invited to speak at conferences, schools, and community events, sharing his journey from homelessness to hope. His speeches often left audiences in tears, not only because of his vulnerability, but also because of the hope he instilled in others. One particularly memorable event was at a high school where Tom spoke to a group of at-risk teens. He shared his experiences of hitting rock bottom and emphasized the importance of resilience and believing in oneself. "You might feel like the world's against you," he told them, "but I'm here to tell you that you're not alone. People care. You can turn things around, just like I did." After the event, several students approached him, sharing their struggles and expressing gratitude for his words. One boy, Michael, admitted that he had been contemplating dropping out of school but now felt inspired to stay and pursue his dream of becoming a chef. Tom later followed up with Michael, arranging for him to volunteer in the center's kitchen program. Over time, Michael's confidence grew, and he eventually enrolled in culinary school, a journey that Tom proudly supported. For Richard, the Peterson Center was not only a way to make amends for his past, but also an opportunity to redefine his legacy. Though his success as a CEO had earned him wealth and recognition, he realized that the impact he was making through the center was far more meaningful. One afternoon, as he walked through the center's garden, a project he had personally funded, he spotted a young boy playing with a handmade wooden toy. The boy's mother, a resident who had recently joined the center, approached Richard with a grateful smile. "Thank you for giving us a place to start over," she said. "I was scared when we first came here, but now I feel like we belong somewhere." Richard nodded, his throat tight with emotion. "You belong here," he said, "and you're not alone." Moments like these reaffirmed Richard's commitment to the center's mission. He began spending more time mentoring residents, sharing his business expertise to help them achieve their goals. Whether it was advising someone on how to start a small business or helping them prepare for a job interview, Richard found immense satisfaction in these interactions. To celebrate the success of the Peterson Center and its expanding network, Tom and Richard organized a reunion for all the residents who had been part of the program over the years. Invitations were sent far and wide, and the response was overwhelming. On the day of the event, the center's main hall was filled with laughter, tears, and heartfelt stories. Former residents shared updates on their lives, from new jobs and homes to marriages and even babies. The atmosphere was electric, a testament to the power of second chances. One of the most touching moments came when a young woman named Elena approached Tom and Richard. She had been one of the first residents to benefit from the center's programs, and she had since become a social worker, dedicating her career to helping others. "I wouldn't be here without you," Elena said, her voice breaking. "And now I get to do for others what you did for me. Thank you for giving me a new life." As the reunion continued, Tom and Richard marveled at how their single act of kindness had blossomed into a movement that changed lives. By the end of the evening, as the hall emptied and the last of the guests said their goodbyes, Tom and Richard sat together in a quiet corner, reflecting on everything they had witnessed. "Did you ever think we'd get here?" Tom asked, his voice full of wonder. Richard smiled. "Not in a million years, but seeing all these people, hearing their stories, it makes every challenge worth it." Tom nodded. "You know, if it weren't for that day in the rain, none of this would exist. It's amazing how one moment can change everything." Richard raised his glass in a toast. "To moments that matter, and to second chances." They clinked their glasses, both feeling a profound sense of fulfillment. The Peterson Center had not only transformed the lives of its residents, but had also reshaped their own, proving that even the smallest acts of kindness can create ripples of change that extend far beyond what anyone could imagine. As the years passed, the Peterson Center grew into a beacon of hope, becoming a model for similar programs across the country. Its success was not just measured in the number of residents it had helped, but in the profound cultural shift it had inspired, a movement that recognized the value of every individual, regardless of their circumstances. Inspired by the Peterson Center's impact, Tom and Richard worked tirelessly to establish new locations. Each center was tailored to meet the unique needs of its community, offering programs that ranged from vocational training to mental health support. The centers became sanctuaries for people seeking a fresh start. Each one carried the same ethos of dignity, respect, and opportunity that Tom and Richard had envisioned. Stories of transformation poured in. Residents who once lived in despair now thrived as teachers, artists, entrepreneurs, and community leaders. One particularly heartwarming story came from a young man named Aaron. A talented musician, he had lost everything to addiction. At the Peterson Center, he rediscovered his passion for music and began teaching it to children in the community. Over time, Aaron became a celebrated local artist, using his platform to advocate for mental health and addiction recovery. "I was invisible," Aaron said at a gala celebrating the center's 10th anniversary. "But this place saw me when no one else did. And now, I get to use my voice to help others find theirs." For Tom, the transformation he had experienced at the Peterson Center was not just external, but deeply personal. He had gone from being a man defined by survival to one who thrived on purpose. His role as an ambassador for the center brought him joy, but it was his relationships with the residents that fulfilled him the most. Tom's past as a homeless man gave him a unique ability to connect with those who walked through the center's doors. He shared his story with honesty and vulnerability, reminding everyone that no one was beyond redemption. One day, while mentoring a new resident named Lucy, Tom shared a piece of advice that had guided him through his darkest days. "Your past doesn't define you," he said. "What matters is what you do next, and as long as you're breathing, there's always a next step." Lucy, a single mother rebuilding her life after escaping an abusive relationship, later credited Tom's words with giving her the strength to keep going. Years later, she returned to the center as a volunteer, eager to pay forward the kindness she had received. As Richard approached retirement, he found himself reflecting on the legacy he would leave behind. His achievements as a CEO paled in comparison to the fulfillment he felt from his work with the Peterson Center. The center had not only changed his perspective, but had also redefined his purpose. Richard began writing a memoir, documenting the journey from that fateful rainy day to the present. He wanted the world to understand that transformation was possible, not just for those in need, but for anyone willing to open their heart and take a leap of faith. In the memoir's introduction, Richard wrote, "I set out to give someone a second chance and found myself receiving one in return. This is not just a story of redemption, but a testament to the power of compassion. It is a reminder that no act of kindness is too small to make a difference." The memoir became a bestseller, with proceeds donated to the Peterson Center. Its success further amplified the center's message, inspiring people worldwide to consider how they could create positive change in their own communities. On the 20th anniversary of the Peterson Center's founding, Tom and Richard hosted a grand celebration. Held at the original center, the event brought together residents, volunteers, donors, and supporters from around the globe. The atmosphere was electric, filled with laughter, music, and stories of triumph. The highlight of the evening was a tribute to Tom and Richard's vision. Former residents took turns sharing their journeys, each one a testament to the life-changing impact of the center. Among them was Aaron, who performed a song he had written about hope and resilience, moving the audience to tears. As the event drew to a close, Tom and Richard took the stage together, their bond stronger than ever. Richard, now in his 70s, looked out at the crowd with pride. "When we started this journey, it was just an act of kindness," he said. "But what you see here tonight is proof of what can happen when compassion meets action." Tom smiled, his voice steady but emotional as he added, "This isn't about us. It's about every person who walked through those doors and decided to believe in themselves. It's about every volunteer, every donor, every supporter who made this possible. You are all part of this story." As the lights dimmed and the celebration came to an end, Tom and Richard stood side by side, watching as the crowd began to disperse. The Peterson Center was more than a building. It was a legacy, a living, breathing testament to the power of giving someone a chance. "I couldn't have done this without you," Tom said, turning to Richard. "And I couldn't have done it without you," Richard replied. Their journey had begun with a single act of kindness, but its impact would continue to ripple outward for generations to come. Together, they had proven that everyone deserves a second chance, and that the best way to change the world is to start with one life at a time. The story of Tom and Richard is a powerful reminder that true wealth lies in the lives we touch and the difference we make. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with others. And stay tuned for more stories of hope, compassion, and transformation. See you in the next video. See you in the next video. See you in the next video.